These posts are starting to get on my nerves because they make claims which in my view are impossible to guarantee, which is exactly what she says. She makes the claim that Labour will guarantee young people will be earning or learning by breaking down these barriers to opportunity. But I will explain my reasoning in this video. But before we get on to the post and my reasoning, please do me the favour of subscribing to the channel, if not just for the Christmas sweater, because we are in that season after all. Now, let's get to the post. She says, the Tories claimed to have maxed out on support for young people. Now, hold up right there. Let's define what we are talking about with young people, because the law has a definition for pretty much everything, including young people. The Children and Young Persons Act of 1933 says that a young person is someone who has attained the age of 14, but under the age of 18. So not yet an adult, a little bit beyond a child, but a young person between the ages of 14 and not yet reached 18. Now, we are talking about that group. Now, that group of young people are going through the prime education years of their life, including GCSEs and A-levels, etc., before they reach the age of 18, before they are an adult. So the post says, the Tories claim to have maxed out on support for young people. She then says Labour will back them to the hilt with a guarantee to get them earning or learning by breaking down barriers to opportunity. So we're talking about young people. They've reached the age of 14, not yet an adult. They're in that middle gap. She says they will guarantee to get them earning or learning. Now, there are not many things you can guarantee in life. One of them is that young people will be earning or learning, not least of which because they may not choose to, or their parents may not cooperate and all those sorts of things. But all those things aside, even if they weren't a problem, there are problems. And I'm talking specifically not just about the impact of VAT on the private schools directly, on their children directly, but the knock-on and the consequential effects upon other people, other children, one of which is illustrated in this thread in response, where Ollie Metcalf responds and says, yet another person why the UK Labour's education tax is such a disaster, less opportunity for those on low incomes, less social mobility, and children's dreams shattered for nothing. This is a post here, somebody not directly affected by the VAT on private schools, but it does have an effect. Let me show you this first, and then I'm going to tell you another long-winded story about what's really happening as a result, direct result of this VAT on private schools. But listen to this first.
We really wanted Keela to go to a performing arts school. Obviously, it's fee paying. I always thought that, okay, if they offer scholarships, we're good. Like, Keela will work hard. We do what we always do. We'll work hard. We'll smash it. We'll get the golden buzzer and she'll get her place. This new VAT thing has caused this theatre school in particular that we were hoping she would get into. They've scrapped all scholarships. They've scrapped all scholarships, all bursaries, and it's really sad. Not going to lie, yesterday I was very deflated.
So quite simply, a lot of these private establishments are saying, well, we can't afford to do the bursaries and the scholarships and everything else anymore. And so lots of people in this sort of situation will have their dreams and aspirations shattered because they can no longer get the bursary and the scholarship or anything else. And even if they did manage to pay for it, there's VAT on top of it, which again pushes it beyond the boundary for many people. Now, the very reality of this is that many people are having to pay or pushed to pay, which many of them cannot pay, many thousands of pounds on top of the fees that they already pay. Now, let me just smash down a little misconception here. A lot of people think that anyone sending their child or children to a private school is some rich snob who drives flash cars and has multi-million pound houses and so on and so forth. That is absolutely not the case for the vast majority, in fact. There are some in that category, but the vast majority are working damn hard to send their children to these private schools. Now, taking the situation, there is a very real situation that's been sent to me, which I'm going to talk to you about in this video, which is the reason I think that that post is dishonest, because I put it to Bridget Phillipson directly that she knows that this is the case, because quite frankly, you cannot be the Education Secretary and not know that this is really happening. These are real cases, they are really happening, and I put it to her that she knows it. Here's the story. So, one child in particular, going to a private school, the addition of VAT means it's at least £4,000 on top of what they're already paying to scrimp and save to put the money to the private school to send their child there. From January, they cannot do that. It's an extra 4,000 something or other pounds. They don't have the money. They cannot do it. Therefore, not only is it not the next academic year, it is in the middle of an academic year. So from January, they cannot afford it. Therefore, they need to send that child to a state school. Therefore, the mum, so we'll just call her mum and daughter. Mum contacts the local education authority for advice. What do I do, she says, because I can't afford these fees anymore, can't go to that school anymore. The schools tried their best to lower the fees and account for the VAT. They can't do it. No, and before people say, oh, they can just absorb the 20%, they can't. Anybody, if they had a 20% on top of their normal outgoings, they would struggle. Any business that had a sudden 20% bump in their costs is going to struggle, or a 20% hit in their profits is going to struggle. Unless you're one of these energy companies with billions and billions in profits, and even then it would disrupt things. But let's carry on. They cannot do it. So they have to account for it best they can. So mum phones the local education authority and says, cannot do it, need to send my daughter to a state school. What do I do? Local authority says, well, you need to call the local schools directly to check them for available places. So mum does that. She calls around, no places. Local schools do not have any places. She's advised that the daughter will go on a wait list. Now, immediately, this is a problem because the daughter is in the middle of her GCSEs, and by January, she has no school. There are no alternatives confirmed. January, she is schoolless. Local authority, mum goes back to local authority and says, well, is there a list of available places anywhere in the regional area that I can call up? Local authority says, no, you need to find out. You need to call the schools, you need to find out the places. But she's already done that because mum's already called these local schools and they don't have any places. Add to the complication, the GCSE element, she's obviously doing specific subjects and specific boards and needs that continuity because she's in the middle of the GCSE, and so that needs to continue. And that is on top of any difficulty that we've got already. So in any event, there are only going to be a limited number of schools teaching those subjects with those exam boards, adding to all this difficulty. Mum, not knowing what to do, contacts local MP. MP suggests, well, there's another few schools that I'm aware of that might have a space here, and that school is 25 miles away. Let's call that School X. So mum gets in touch with School X. They say, there is a place, we can accommodate daughter, but we're not doing two of those GCSE subjects. So there might be a place 25 miles away, so 100-mile daily round trip. So mum therefore would have to give up her job because she can't do that because it would take too much time. And on top of that, two GCSE subjects are not covered by that school in any event. Now, I personally know how difficult this can be because when I was at state school, I didn't go to a private school. When I was at state school, I turned up for my A-levels, and the first day to begin those courses, they said, well, we're not doing 3 of them. I was doing 5 A-levels. They said, we're not doing those 3. So I said, what do I do? And then I went through this whole process, and eventually I ended up going to 3 separate schools. Long story, another day. So mum then says, well, it's impossible for me to get daughter to and from that school without giving up my job, which I can't do because I need to earn money. So mum then wants to apply for transport. But then, so she goes to the local authority and says, may I apply for transport assistance to get daughter to school X 25 miles away? Local authority says no, because that's outside of the designated local area. To qualify for transport assistance, you need to be within a certain area, and this is too far away. School X is 25 miles away. Local authority says you need to go back to the wait lists on the local schools, and then maybe you can have transport assistance. Even though she doesn't need the transport assistance for the local schools, but the local schools don't have any places. So Mum argues with local authority a little bit and says, well, hang on a minute. I spoke to local schools. They don't have any places. I spoke to my MP. The only school that has a place is 25 miles away. The local authority says, prove it. So Mum goes back to the schools and says, I need evidence that there's no places. Please give me written evidence that you don't have any available places. The school says, we don't do that. All we do is send a weekly report to the local authority as to how many places we do or do not have. So the local authority is demanding the proof from Mum that local schools have no places. Local schools won't provide proof to Mum that they have no places, but the local schools send the list of places that they do or do not have to the local authority every week. So the local authority has the evidence, and yet they're asking Mum to provide the evidence that the school won't provide to Mum. So Mum is now in an impossible position of being unable to provide the local authority with the evidence that they already ostensibly have because the school refuses to provide it. And so the net result of all of this is that the only choice they have is to take the place at school X, which, by the way, I missed out. They didn't get straight in. They had to make an application because originally they had no places. The MP said they might have places. They had to make an application, go on the wait list in the same way. They then did ring and say, we have a place, starts in 9 days, but it's not doing 2 of those GCSEs that your daughter's doing. So the only choice that she had was to go to school X, 25 miles away, so a 100-mile round trip. And to put this into context, most places that are 25 miles away is 30 to 40 minutes in the car at the very least. So you're talking 30, 40 minutes there, 30, 40 minutes back. So an hour, at least an hour and a half round trip twice a day to get daughter to and from school. So Mum could not do her job, so she has to look for alternative work. And the only choice she has, she's putting daughter first to say, well, daughter has to go to school 25 miles away and it's not doing 2 of those GCSEs. And so it is for that reason that I think due to the schools telling these people that they give the local authority a list every week that they do not have places or how many places they do or do not have, because they make those lists and they send them to the local authority, those local authorities must have that list. They must know that these places are not available. But if they were to give that proof directly to Mum, Mum would then have proof that there are no places. And then Bridget Phillipson then would be exposed for knowing as hard fact that there are no places in these areas and that these children's lives are being turned upside down. Now, I say it's in my view, based on the story that I've been told and the story that has been recounted on TikTok. I will link it in the description below so you can hear that full story for yourself. That is just one example. There are many examples. I've got personal friends of mine who've been in exactly this situation. They've been left with no choice but to move 2 children out of a private school because the private school stopped doing the bursary, so they had to move them out. The bursary plus VAT, there's no way they could afford it. So they had to take them out of that private schools and then did the same thing I've just described. Ring around the local schools, no places. Speak to the MP, try to find a place. Speak to the local authority, they say speak to the schools. The schools say we can't give you proof that there's no places, so there's no assistance for the transport. But reportedly, these schools send a list of places they do or do not have to the local authority, and then they report back in. Presumably, they report back into government. If they don't do that, then it's a rubbish system. If they do that, then Bridget Phillipson knows that these places do not exist. Now, I've heard so many accounts of this being the case that it simply cannot be, based on all of the accounts that have been given to me, it cannot be the case that government does not know this, that they do not know these places do not exist, and that the only way of getting someone into a school is in that situation. It's miles away, it's disrupting their lives. And not only is it bad enough going from one school to another, whether it's private or not, from one school to another in the middle of a GCSE year, but worse still when it's 25 miles away, they don't know who's in those schools, they lose all their friends, they lose their entire life as it is at that school because they go miles away, and the school at the end of the day doesn't do 2 of those GCSEs. What a mess. There are other ways. Now, on the other hand, she says that they are pushing this breakfast club stuff for children. Now, I'm not going to say providing free breakfast to children that can't afford their breakfast is a bad idea, but if this is the reason they're doing it, it's a bad reason. They should find the money somewhere else. I'm not against these children having free breakfast if their parents can't afford it. Personally, I think parents should do what they can to make sure their children have breakfast, but if they can't, then absolutely this is a great idea, but not at the expense of all the children that are being forced out of private school miles away and not doing some of their GCSEs. That is a shambles. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Please do subscribe if you like me holding this government to account, and as always, thank you for watching.